So in this next video for Chapter 12, we want to look at both what we looked at in Chapter 11, an effect on a change in the savings rate, and see how that affects short-run and long-run growth. And then we also want to think about more of the determinants for improvements in technological progress. And so we'll talk a little bit about sort of technology and other forms of improving technology in this chapter. And then in the next video, we're going to talk about ways that institutions play an important role. And by institutions, we mean everything, from like court systems and rule of law to property rights and markets, even like social norms of how the economy works. And things like, how does the government provide infrastructure for growth, and how does the government provide incentives for investment and provide education and things like that, and how important those things are. So first, we're going to look at what happens when the savings rate increases. And so similarly to Chapter 11, an increase in the savings rate will increase our investment curve up, right? And so we'll go from S0 to S1. That will increase our capital per effective worker, right? We'll go from KAN0 to KAN1. That will increase our capital per effective worker. That will increase our our output per effective worker, and we will end up at our new equilibrium, right? So this is our new equilibrium level of output, and this is our new equilibrium level of capital per effective worker. So we've actually already seen this graph because it was sort of previewed in Chapter 11. But what happens is we were growing, right, at GA in terms of output per worker. And then we grow faster for a while because of the higher savings rate. And then we grow at the same rate, but we start at a higher level. So if we increase the savings rate, the takeaway here then is that we will, in the short run, increase the growth rate of output and output per worker. And then eventually we'll go back to the growth rate of output and output per worker. So output will grow at G sub A plus G sub N, and output per worker will grow at G sub A in the long run. So basically the short takeaway is that it won't change long-run growth, but it will change short-run growth. And if you can increase the growth rate in the short run, you'll end up at a higher level of output. So where does technological progress come from? We've just made this model that basically puts everything into technological progress for long-run growth. And where it comes from is people trying to find ways to produce things more cheaply. And really this comes from a microeconomic perspective from the profit motive, right? Either entrepreneurs or existing companies trying to find ways to produce either the same products more cheaply or develop new products. And we call that process research and development, right? And research and development can take place in huge companies and labs, and it can take place in people's garages and basements while they're trying to come up with a new product or service that the market will like. And so if we think about, how successful research and development is, we can think about the fertility of it. And so just, how likely are we to come up with new ideas, and the appropriability of research results, right? And so the question here is whether or not the inventor, whether that's a person or a firm, gets to benefit from their new ideas, right? And so that will depend on things like patents and copyrights, and just how enforceable those are. And so certainly in the United States, we have a fairly strong patent and copyright system, although those patents and copyrights are not always respected around the world, just as we should say the United States in its beginnings did not always respect the patents and copyrights of other countries in, say, like the 19th century. And so if we think about it, what we want to think about is, how do we balance those incentives between getting people to develop new products and processes that contribute to economic growth and technological progress versus how those ideas spread through the economy in order to benefit everybody else. So here's an example. This is an example of hybrid corn. This is a type of corn which increased yields by up to 20%. And we can see, that it sort of spread throughout the country in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. Starting here in Iowa, basically became 100% over the course of, 10 years. And then similarly in Wisconsin, Kentucky, Texas, and Alabama. And that's often what happens with new technology, is that it takes a while to spread, and people will adopt it once they see evidence that it is better, right? And this happened with electricity, with telephones, with, airplanes, with the internet. It takes a while for new technology to be adopted and for everybody to benefit from it. So, if we think about recent waves of technology, we can think about, companies adopting just sort of information technology and computers in the 1990s, and that helped fuel economic growth. And then the widespread adoption of the internet in the 2000s and 2010s, and how that fueled economic growth. Smartphone adoption in the 2010s. So all of those things have, taken a while to spread throughout, 100% of the population, but have benefited the economy as it's been adopted. Now, one of the things that we want to make sure is clear is that when we talk about technology in economics, we don't just mean like high tech, right? High tech is certainly one piece of technology, but anything that allows us to produce more output from fewer inputs is an increase in technology. And management is certainly one way that we can improve technology. If a smart manager can say, okay, well, we're actually doing this inefficiently. If we take these workers and we move them over here and we change our production process, we can actually increase total output. That's an improvement in technology. And there definitely is some evidence that improving management practices in especially sort of small and medium-sized firms that can increase output, even for companies that have the same physical capital, and so that's important. That's an important piece there of improving technology. That said, we still don't have a great way to model the sort of microeconomic decisions and requirements that go into innovation and research and development, and therefore lead to technological progress. We have to think about, how much countries are investing in education, how much firms are investing in research and development, and even then, it's not clear whether technological progresses will sort of be constant, will slow down in the future, could increase in the future. That's not really clear. But what we do know is that, one way for poorer countries to grow quickly, and this is something we'll talk about in the next video, is to adopt the latest technology, right? It's much harder when you are at the sort of technological frontier to innovate and grow every year, and you might grow at 2 to 3% per year in terms of productivity, versus a country that can say, oh, all right, well, we can take the best technology from the United States, Western Europe, Japan, and put that when we're investing in our new capital, improving our capital per worker, and grow much faster. And so that's what we've seen in countries like Japan in the 70s and 80s. South Korea in the 80s and 90s, and now China, is that they're able to grow much faster and take advantage of the sort of technological frontier. And then, of course, once they get to the technological frontier, like Japan and South Korea have, then they slow down in terms of growth and match the other countries that are already there.